Yay! I love to be with you guys. Soma City, how are you? It's like a party. It's so good. Well, I am Amy Seiffert, and I'm a friend of Soma City, and I'm so glad to be with you this morning. There's a lot that has happened since I've been in your presence, right? Like a pandemic. Like that's like just one of the things. But here's the deal, you guys. I would wager to say something even more monumental than a pandemic has occurred since I've seen. I know, right? We got a puppy. Right? I think there might be a photo. I know. I think we're fools. We're idiots. We did it. The kids have been asking for there. There might be a photo, something up there. It is a Cavachon, and this dear little puppy is not really potty trained. I mean, you have to do all those things, and I love it. He's really great. He's really cute. Except like he keeps barfing on my bare feet. Like comes over and sits. I'm like, you're so cute, and then he's like, bleh. And I'm like, but then I'm still like, you're the cutest thing. Like you're the best. And all my kids are like, wow, Mom, like you really love this guy. You just puked all over yourself. Dog lovers, like we became a dog lover club. Like we're in the club. Yes. Okay, is there like a secret handshake I should learn? Is there like something? It's barking at each other. All right, sniffing our rears together. No, we're not doing that. What is happening? It's not that bad. Okay, good. Okay, so that's, there's a puppy in the house. It's a good time. I'm a mom of 3. So I have a 14-year-old son who's going to be a freshman this year. What are we doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And then I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. And I just want you to know, if you were to walk into the Seiffert household at any given moment, there would be someone possibly losing their ever-loving mind. Like, the drama is thick in our house. It is. The overwhelm, the panic, the anxiety. Like this is just how it goes. And I don't know if this happens to you. This is for the parents in the room, but if I ask like for a simple chore to be done, like maybe, put your laundry away, brush your teeth, sometimes I think, wait, did we say something else? Did they think I said, we're going to need to sever your arm, and you're going to have to hand it to me because the writhing and the agony and the demon possession on the floor where I'm like, oh, we're going to have to lay some hands on this. Like, what? Has this happened to you where you're like, really? Like, this is teeth brushing. What is going on? And then, do you know what I'm saying? Our parents, does this happen to you where you really do think maybe we should lay hands on this child? But then this is where it turns the corner, and this is the heartbreaking moment. And when I was a young mom, in this first happened, I thought, what is going on? In their heightened emotion, all of a sudden they start spewing out these terrible lies about themselves. They're like, I'm the worst. No one loves me. Everybody hates me. Like all these things that we do not say to them, but we see it all coming out. It's like their worst fears in their drama and in their writhing and their foaming. Like they're just like all these things coming out. And I think, oh no, this is not it. This isn't who you are. And I watched my heart break. And now, like, as a veteran mom, now I'm like, okay, this is par for the course. This is how it goes. But I have to imagine that when my heart is breaking, as I watch my child just lose it and say terrible things about themselves, like, no one loves me. I'm the worst, that this is how God also, his heart breaks when we do this about ourselves, when we say this same thing. Now we might not be rolling on the ground. We might be a little bit more sophisticated about the untruths we're telling ourselves, right? But his heart is like, this isn't who you are. This isn't your story. This isn't how I've created you to think about yourself, right? Because what we think, we become. Right? We see this all the time. Yes. If you tell yourself that you're dumb, you're going to start acting dumb. You're going to make dumb choices, right? But if you tell yourself you're smart, you're going to start believing you're smart. You're going to make smart choices. We see this in all these ways. And the neuroscience is even saying that your pathways in your brain, grooves are being made in your brain on how you think, and then you act in that way. So many of us might be thinking things, the stories we tell ourselves in the background might be things like, I'm too broken for God to use, or I'm too messy for others to love, or I'm too afraid to be brave, or I'm not smart and I can't learn a new thing. I love what John Acuff says about our thoughts. He has a new book called Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking, and he says this: one of the greatest mistakes you can make in life is assuming all your thoughts are true. Right? When a thought comes in, if we assume, oh, that must be true, oh man, we're going to be tossed here, there, and everywhere. But if we look at that thought and we think, is this what I want to think? Is this who I want to become? Nope, I'm tossing it. We have to think through those stories. And just to be honest, some of the soundtracks that I found playing in my life, in the background of my life, some of the stories that I'm telling myself are things like this. Amy, you are not smart. And you never will be. Some other things that come into my mind are, God is disappointed in you. Right? Can anybody identify with that one? Or, God is tired of giving you grace. He is tired of it. But you guys, I wrote a whole book about grace, and I still have that soundtrack in my brain that I have to take a hold of it and say, no, I am not keeping you. I need to think about a different thing, a different truth, a different story I'm going to tell myself, right? And I don't know what kind of shame stories you have playing as soundtracks in the back of your mind throughout your day. I don't know what kinds of things you're telling yourself, what lies are going on here, but I want us to believe this morning that we are beloved even in our brokenness, right? In the middle of our brokenness, we are still beloved. And I think, Soma City, I was praying for you guys a lot. And I was asking God, what do they need to hear? And I think this story this morning is something we need to hear. And I've been praying against familiarity. Like if you grew up in church, you might have heard this 100 times. I am praying that this gives you a fresh song in your heart, as Psalm 96 talks about, that we would sing a new song, a new soundtrack, as you look at this story today about the Father's love for you being beloved in your brokenness. So my first point this morning is this: we need to tell the story of the Father's love often, to ourselves, to one another. Tell the story of the Father's love often. And the Bible is full of great stories about how the Father loves us. But we're going to look at this one in Luke 15. So if you have your Bible, turn with us. It'll be on the screen if not. And we start here in verse 1. It says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were drawing near to him," to Jesus. Tax collectors and sinners. This is code for the people who charged extra money and took it for themselves, and so they were very disliked. And sinners were the very looked down upon, right? But they're drawing near to Jesus. Verse 2 says, "And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling." This could be code for the pastors and staff. These were the theologians. These were the people who were spiritual. They're grumbling as they see this happen, right? And they say, this man, Jesus, he receives sinners, and he eats with them. So they're having this grumbling conversation. And Jesus, in the midst, in front of everyone, he says, you know what? I've got 3 stories for you. And he tells one story we sang about this morning, about there were 100 sheep. One was lost. The shepherd ran after him. And then he tells another story. There were 10 coins. One was lost. Swept the house, found it. All the rejoicing. And then he gets to this story. And we're going to look at this. And it's a thick story. There's 2 sons. There's another one we're not going to look at. Read it on your own. But we're going to focus here. Verse 11. And he said, Jesus tells them, they're all sitting here. They're all listening. He says, there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of your property that is coming to me." This is as if he were to say, you know what? I kind of wish you were dead so that I could have your inheritance coming to me. Can you imagine if after this service, you go to lunch with your parents and you're like, "Hey, Pops, I kind of wish I could just have like all my money. Like I think there's like something coming to me when you're dead. Can we just kind of get that over with? Because I'm gonna I got some things I need to do." Here's what happens. This is what happens. And the father does it. He divides it. He says, okay, he divides his property and gives it to the younger son. Now, verse 13, not many days later, the son gathers all he has. He gets out his suitcase. He packs his bag. He buys a plane ticket, let's say, to Europe, because he's like, that sounds fun. And off he goes. He took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property on reckless living. He's wasting it. We're talking thousands of dollars. Partying, doing whatever in the world he wants to do, just living it up, right? Now look at this verse 14. And when he had spent most of it, when he had spent everything, everything's gone. He has nothing left. When he had spent everything, a famine arose in the country and he began to be in need. Here we go. So what's he going to do? He's got to eat. He's got to live. He went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country who said, I have a field with some pigs. You can feed you can slop the hogs. That's the job I have for you. And goes and does it. In verse 16, he says he was longing to be fed. As he's feeding the pigs, he was longing to eat the pig food. This is how he was just rolling in it, having the best time of his life. And here he is at the bottom on the floor wishing that he could eat, and no one would give him anything. But then he wakes up. He's in this crazy place, and he wakes up and he says, you know what? How many of my father's hired hands have everything they need, right? More than enough, and I am starving. I am perishing with hunger. I'm gonna get up. I'm going to rise. I'm going to go to my father, and I'm going to say, Father, I have sinned against heaven, against God, and against you. And you know what? I am sorry. Now listen to this. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. I don't know if that's a story, a soundtrack that you've got going on in your brain. I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I can't do that. I can't be the son or daughter of the Most High King. He says, treat me as one of your hired servants. So that's his speech he's prepared. He rises up and he goes to his father. And his dad, arms crossed on the front step, had been waiting day after day with bitterness and anger and was ready to punish his son. Nope. But that's what we imagine, right? Like if you think about it, I think I would be like, just waiting on my porch all day. What is even happening? I don't think I would. This reaction, verse 20. But while he was still a long way off, he's been waiting. He's been waiting for his son. His father saw him, felt compassion, or some verses say he was filled with compassion. From his toes all the way up through his body, the top of his head, just filled up with compassion for his son. And he pulls up whatever he's wearing, maybe robes, and he starts running recklessly up with a band. Like, this is crazy town. This might be an old man. Have you ever seen your dad? When's the last time you saw your dad running? He doesn't care. This is undignified, and he does not care. And he tackles. We're talking bear hug, embrace, and now he's kissing him, and this is the welcome. This is the welcome. And the son says, Father, he starts his speech. I'm so sorry. I have sinned against God, against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father, in the message, it says, the father cuts him off. He's like, listen. He says to his servants, quickly, bring him the best robe. Bring him the ring that's going to have my seal on it. He's my son. Bring him my stuff. Bring him sandals from my house. He is mine, and he needs to be clothed. And take the biggest, fattest calf and let's slaughter it because we're having a party tonight. We're going to celebrate, right? My son was dead, and now he's alive. He was lost, and now he's found, and they had a party. Friends, there are 5 verbs in this story about God the Father that, we need to implant into the grooves of our brain. We need to think about God and how he thinks about us in this way, right? Verse 20 is the linchpin. 5 verbs. The Father saw him. The Father sees you. I don't know where you are this morning and where you feel unseen, unnoticed by God, invisible, but he sees you. He's filled with compassion. He is not angry at you. He's not ashamed. He's not disappointed. He is filled with compassion. He says, oh my gosh, my daughter, my son. He's running toward you. He's the one coming after you. He's embracing you. He's kissing you, right? If this isn't a picture of what it is to be beloved in your brokenness, then I don't know what is. I don't know what is. A son who took thousands of dollars, his inheritance, and wasted it. It is gone. It's not like he has another inheritance for him. It's done. A son who wrote shame into his family name. Right? A son who believed he is no longer worthy to be called son or daughter, right? Son. Again, if you struggle with being enough or being worthy to be called God's beloved, this story is for you. If you struggle with believing that God is ashamed of you or he's tired of giving you grace for that sin you keep doing over and over and over again, this story is for you, right? This is our Father. This is God, the opposite of what most of us would imagine happening if you came back in this way. He keeps heaping on the love and the compassion and the grace. There's literally a handful of verbs for us this morning. So here's the deal, Soma City. I want you guys to make a fool of yourself with me this morning. Let's go. All right. Everybody put up their right arm with their hand out wide. Yes, we're gonna rewrite some. You might. Did you wear deodorant? I know you did. Good job. All right, I want you guys to wiggle your right thumb and repeat after me. My Father sees me. My Father sees me. Yes. Wiggle your index finger and say, He feels compassion for me. He feels compassion for me. Yes. Wiggle your middle finger and say, He is running toward me. He is running toward me. Wiggle that ring finger and say, He embraces me. He embraces me. Yes. Wiggle it, this last pinky finger and say, He kisses me. Listen, put that hand to your chest and say, I am beloved. Yes, church. What would happen if every morning before you got up, you put that hand on your chest and you imagined, you rewrote the story and the brain pathways in your brain, and you sat there and you wiggled your fingers through those 5 verbs, those feelings about how God feels about you. If you just sat there and you were like, my Father sees me. And then you say, He's filled with compassion for me. He's running. He embraces me. He kisses me. What if throughout the day you stopped in your kitchen and you put your hand on your chest and you ran through those? What if at lunchtime you went out to your car and you put your hand on your chest and you ran through those? And you imagined, you pictured, this is God toward you. You have a handful of compassion from God around you. I think your brain would change. I think how you act would change. I think this community would change, right? Yes. Because when we know we are beloved and cherished, we pour it out to others, and they are beloved and cherished, right? Yes. And listen, I want to remind you guys, this isn't a one-time shot. This isn't a story about the kid who blew it, and now he can't blow it ever again. This is God's grace over and over, because that's the nature of love. It's not like he came back and now he's in this performative relationship with his dad. That's not how this works. That's not how love can't be earned. That's not the nature of love, right? God's heart posture for us doesn't change. It's really crazy. Also, let's take note in this situation. What is the son's responsibility when he's faced with his choices and his sin? And what is the father's response, right? When it comes to our sinful choices, I want you guys to hear this. Our responsibility is humility, and God's response is heavenly. Right? When it comes to our sinful choices, our responsibility is humility, and God's response is heavenly. It's heavenly. It's different than any other earthly father we can imagine. Because I don't know what kind of father figures you've had in your life, but this is a different kind of father. It's beyond what we can imagine, right? again, we will change how we think about ourselves, and then we'll change how we think about others, because love has this domino effect. When we are beloved, we start to believe others are beloved, because here's the deal. Loved people love people. Yes, loved people love people, right? You're welcome. Listen, you've heard the adage, hurt people hurt people. The same is true about loved people. Loved people love people. When you know and believe you are worthy of God's love, that will spill out, and you will look at others and you'll begin to love them with that same compassion that has been filled up from God onto you, onto others, right? That's what happens. Well, I have been using this word beloved this morning, and it's not a word we're using in our everyday language, right? You're not calling one another beloved. Maybe you are. That's amazing. I hope you are. But we got to look at this word beloved so it sinks in a little bit more. It actually just means dearly loved. It's a fond term of affection and endearment. And we actually see it used for Jesus himself by the Father. Ooh, yeah, check this out. Mark 1. It says, where are we? Mark 1, verse 9. At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee, look at this, and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as Jesus, this is a whole thing. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open, the Spirit ascending like a dove. And listen to this. A voice came to heaven and said, "You are my beloved Son, and in you I am well pleased." Can we just talk about the fact for a moment that God calls his Son beloved before he does one miracle? Before he performs anything amazing, before he pushes on culture to change it, before he flips tables, he is beloved before it all. Same. That is us, that is you. Beloved before any performance. And here's the deal. We can claim this same beloved affection from God the Father that he has for Jesus. You want to know why? Jesus tells us to. Look at this in John 15:9. This is Jesus talking, and he says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. As the Father has called me beloved, so I call you beloved." And then he says, look, now remain in my love. Stay home with me. Don't pack your bags and run after your desires. Stay home. The more we believe we are the beloved, the more we want to stay with him. You want to stay by people who love you? You feel safe, known, cared for, you want to stay. But when you forget and you listen to our culture and the world, and then you start chasing your desires, you're running away. Come back home. Remain in his love. If you have to come back to the Father 5, 10, 15 times a day, great. He's still there. Remain in his love. You know who did this best? Who really thought of himself as the beloved because Jesus said so? John, the writer of the 4th gospel. He's the best to me. He writes 5 times in the book of John that he's the one Jesus loves, which I think it's hilarious. I'm like, did you just really needed to know that? And you wanted us to know that? Like, you're like the loved one, right? Look at this, John 13:23. It says, one of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. He's talking about himself. Like we don't know. John 19 says, when Jesus saw his mother there, this is him on the cross, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, right? John 22, so she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. All right, John, we see you. John 21:7, then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. And then the last part, the 5th one, John 20:20, Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following him. He knows he's the beloved, right? Listen, John knows that Jesus is the beloved. He knows that he is the beloved, and he knows that we are the beloved, right? So John went on to write more letters. 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and 9 times in his letters, he addresses us as beloved. 9 times. Here's a few of them. He says, beloved, now we are children of God. He was always writing about love. I mean, that was like the thing. He says, beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence toward God. Then he writes, beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God. Then he says again, beloved, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another. And then he says, beloved, I pray you may prosper in all things in your health, just as your soul prospers. Beloved, beloved. John knows Jesus is the beloved. John knows he is the beloved. He knows we are the beloved. Church, no amount of brokenness can cancel your belovedness. No amount of your brokenness can cancel your belovedness. Take that to the bank. Cash it in. Well, I'll just close with this story. It's one of my favorites. So there's a young girl who grows up in Traverse City, Michigan. Anybody been? Yep. But here's the deal. She is just over her old-fashioned parents who are, overreacting to her nose ring and the music she listens to and the length of her skirts. And she's like, I'm out. And she runs away. She ends up in Detroit, where she meets a man who drives the biggest car she's ever seen. And she calls him boss. Now, the man with the big car recognizes that since she's underage, men will pay premium for her. And so she goes to work for him. And life is good for a while. Things are good. She's having a good time. But then she gets sick for a few days, and she's surprised at how quickly he turns on her. And before she knows it, she's out on the streets without a penny to her name. She still turns a couple of tricks a night, but all the money goes to now support her drug habit. One night while sleeping on the metal grates of the city, she begins to feel more or less like a woman of the world and more like a little girl. She just wants to go home. She begins to whimper, God, why did I leave? My dog at home eats better than I do. What am I doing? She just wants to go home. She calls home 3 times, and it goes to voicemail 3 times. And she finally leaves a message, and she says, Mom, Dad, it's me. I was wondering if I could come home. I'm catching a bus your way, and it'll be there at midnight tomorrow, but I understand if you won't be there. During the 7-hour bus ride the next day, she's preparing a speech for her father. And when the bus stop comes to Traverse City, the bus driver announces the 15-minute stop to come. 15 minutes to decide her life. She walks into the terminal not knowing what to expect, but not one of 1,000 seats that she had played out in her mind prepares her for what she sees. There in the bus terminal, in Traverse City, Michigan, stands a group of 40 brothers and sisters and great aunts and uncles and cousins and a grandmother and a great-grandmother to boot. They're all wearing goofy party hats and blowing noisemakers, and taped across the entire wall of the terminal says, "Welcome home." And out of the crowd of well-wishers breaks her dad. And she stares out through tears, quivering in her eyes, and begins her memorized speech. And he interrupts her and he says, "Hush, child. We've got no time for that. No time for apologies. We're going to be late. There's a huge party waiting for you when we get back home." This story is from What's So Amazing About Grace by Philip Yancey, and it's an echo of Luke 15. This is our story. This is how the Father feels about us. He sees you. He's filled with compassion. He's running, he's embracing, he's kissing you. 3 things to end with, church. Retell the story of the Father's love for you often. Tell it to each other. Tell it to your kids. You don't have to have it word for word, but tell those stories. Rewire your brain. Remember, the Father wraps our brokenness with a heavenly handful of compassion. Right? And be like John and practice believing you are